it's harder than ever to predict how things are changing and what that's going to look like. And so I feel like that's important to say too. So like, take this for what it's worth. I think if we're in business, we have to be making assumptions, connecting patterns, looking at what's coming. And also, I think we're certainly in a season where a lot of that is about to look really different. I think I said this in the email, but like I love a good rabbit hole. I love to think about this stuff. I love to study this stuff. Hey, Lucy. And one of the rabbit holes I've been down that I think informs some of what I'm about to say is called, hey, Rebecca, is this document summary prediction. I don't know what the fuck you want to call it. Called AI 2027. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I'll pop it in the chat if you're not. But basically, like some of like the really like forefront minds in AI kind of got together to make sort of this prediction about what's coming with AI, which is really interesting. And I'm leading with this because obviously I think this impacts so much of what's happening, where we're going. But what they basically predicted as like a top level thing is that over the next decade, like where AI is going to be so monumental that it will exceed that of the Industrial Revolution, which is crazy if you really process that. It's such a crazy time to be an entrepreneur, to be in this season, right? Like, and what they also predict is that 2027 is a huge tipping point into that. So, hey, Emma, good to see you. So they predicted that 2027 is a huge tipping point into that. I won't like give you the whole summary. But I lead with that to say, like, I think that change is coming. Big things are happening. If we plan to be in business long term, what is coming in the next 2 years, let alone the next decade, is so massive in terms of like the leap that we're probably going to go through. That one, I don't think it's that we can like fully predict it. But two, I think we have to get ourselves set up well for change. I did a whole live stream last week on what it means to like be adaptable and to create margin and stuff. So that's not what I'm going to talk about today. You can listen to last week's if that feels important to you. But like basically, with everything I'm about to say, like keep in mind, like we have to be ready for change if this is where it's going, right? I mean, think about ChatGPT came out like less than 2 years ago, you guys. It came out in what, like November 2023, and it has impacted how all of us work and operate in our businesses. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I think we'll talk about that today too. But it's in like a year and a half. Like things are gonna start picking up. I'd be so curious if y'all are listening, if you agree with me, but I just think it's so important that we're talking about this and saying this, because I don't think it's business as usual. I mean, in some sense, business always has change and evolution. And in another sense, I think the way that things are about to pick up is something that we all have to get like our brains wrapped around and have a willingness to like lean into and deal with and like really go there with. I think if you don't, you're gonna be frustrated as fuck in business coming up. Hi, Michelle, good to see you. Hey, Maggie. She said yes this weekend. I was talking with hubby about AI. And then I wouldn't be like, the internet happened. So that would be like, oh, that would be like when the internet happened. So this track's excited for your thoughts. Yay. Good to see you. Okay, she agrees too. All right, so like shit's a changing. Let's call it that. Again, that AI 2027 thing is very interesting. Highly recommend giving it a watch, but or a read, sorry. But let's get into some specifics. So I think one thing that's like undeniably clear to me in the current season is that as much as AI is being really helpful, like we are craving humans. Information is completely like not the value that it used to be, right? Like AI has kind of like commoditized knowledge and information. And so that's what we used to sell in our space so much. Like, here's this course, and I'm going to give you this information. Here's this distilled information. And I think like, yes, we could search the internet. It was far easier than having to look like through an encyclopedia for information, but the pace, ease, and complete depth at which we can get information from AI now is just not something that a human can realistically compete with. And so we have to lean into the human side. Like we are not playing the right game if we're trying to be as good at selling knowledge as AI is at giving knowledge, right? We have to be like, well, what sets us apart? Oh, yeah, the human aspect. And I think that's what people are craving now. Might that change? Sure. Like I watched this super funny TikTok that Jen sent me. And I'm gonna butcher it, but this girl is a comedian and she did it in the most hysterical way. And she was basically talking about how, like, you know, boomers are very broad generalization, right? But like boomers are so bigoted, but one day, like, our grandkids gonna come home and they're gonna be like in a relationship with AI, and we're gonna have to be like, love is love. We just didn't used to like sleep with the AI. And like, no, fine, whatever happens in the future. But right now, the difference we have is that human element, right? It's how much can we lean into that? We're playing the wrong game if we're competing with the other aspect of trying to be like better at knowledge. We have to be better at relationships, implementation, helping people utilize that knowledge effectively, helping people truly create results from that human connection, that relationship, all of that kind of stuff, right? So I think that looks like acknowledging, like, if information is no longer the commodity, how are we able to step into that more and to say, hey, I need to help with implementation. I need to give deeper support potentially. I think what so many people are doing right now that is, interesting, and it's like truly a good experiment. And I did the same. Let's see. Tiana said that's so true. It's no longer a knowledge biz. It's a human interaction, community, and connection biz. Totally. So I spent months training an AI to be like something my clients could use if they wanted something like immediately. And I'm a very quick response time, but if they wanted something immediately, they could go do the Lacy bot basically. Now, part of me did that because it was an experiment. And I think it was really, really helpful one for a lot of reasons. But what I can tell you from that experiment is it wasn't actually that helpful at all, because what most people are doing is they're training their own AI. They don't necessarily want yours. Like, does that make sense? So like most of my clients have trained their own ChatGPT, Claude, their own custom GPT, whatever. And so for them to get my Lacy bot wasn't that helpful because theirs knew more about their business than mine did. And why would it make sense for them to train mine on them more? Does that make sense? Right? I feel so meta to talk about it in that way. But like most people are going to be leaning into their own and the knowledge that it's acquiring about them over time. And so when we're going really broad in general with kind of like, okay, well, if I'm not going to sell knowledge, I'll sell an AI bot of my knowledge or something like that. Even that I think gets tricky unless you're really, really, really dialed in and specific. So like the advice I've been giving all my clients is like, if you're going to put a bot in a program or something like that, how dialed in can it be? How specific can it be? Because just this, like, it's a Lacy or whatever is like not appealing to people because they're already doing that in a really effective way on their own for the most part. Yeah, Family says 100%. Maggie says it makes sense. I have my own GPT and it knows my business inside and out, right? Megan says totally right. So almost everybody is that at that point. So giving them something else to do that with is like really unappealing, even if it's like whatever. Oh, here's my proprietary like framework or something that I've trained a custom GPT on. Like maybe it depends though. Like it depends on what your proprietary framework is, if it's really needed for that, et cetera, et cetera. Like I feel like so many people are leaning in that direction. And I think it's really important to experiment with. I think we're in a season of experimentation, but I think we're already seeing that level of specificity has to be so dialed in because you're not just competing with like are they going to be in your program? You're competing with their own AI, right? So like Maggie's saying hers knows her business inside and out. Like, yeah, like you almost can't compete with that. So what else can you give on top of that? You know, Like that's what really feels important here. It's like I'm like have been very engaged in this whole conversation around using ChatGPT for therapy because I find it, you guys know I'm a former therapist and I find it like incredibly interesting. Um, and what it seems like the middle ground that most people are kind of like saying right now and coming to is that it can give clients really helpful ahas in between sessions, but since it's so affirming and it, you know, it's just like a learning language model and is kind of going to reflect what you give it, sometimes it can really lead a client in the wrong direction. And so that combined with a really great therapist can actually create better outcomes and results because they're having more of that in between reflection and support. But that on its own can actually lead to like really harmful things. Like there is some like ChatGPT induced psychosis and stuff like that. It's like very interesting. So I have no particular thoughts on that, but I've just been watching that a lot. Like when I say I love to go down a TikTok rabbit hole, I'm like, give me everything there is to know about that. Yeah, Rebecca too. She's like so many thoughts. Rebecca, if you have like a quick blurb, give it to us. I want to know your thoughts too. But like I say that to say, like, to me, that's the better way we could be thinking about this. Like if I know my clients are utilizing ChatGPT and it's really trained on their business, well, like where can I come in? One of the ways I feel like I've been doing that lately, well, I mean, always is like the personalization, the reflection, the like, I know stuff that they don't. I'm willing to push back in a way that ChatGPT isn't. I know our industry in a way that ChatGPT doesn't have quite the same, maybe like nuanced knowledge base of, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm able to go, which is what I've been doing a lot lately, and I think is very frustrating, to be honest with you, but I think is important, is, hey, this sounds way too much like ChatGPT, and I think we've lost some of you in it, and we have to bring back the human element to this and the your specific writing style and tone and verbiage and whatever, because we're getting too far off base. Like that's the stuff we can really be doing as coaches, is helping them dial in a way that helps them utilize ChatGPT better instead of overutilizing it in a way that's actually taking the human element out when that's what's working most, right? Julie said I've used bots in a program, which was amazing. It's like an assistant to pull out relevant info and principles from that program, so I don't have to keep rewatching content. Well, something like ChatGPT knows about my business doesn't apply. That coaches process, but doesn't apply that coaches process and nuance. It totally makes sense. Yep, yep. Right. Like they had to go really, really, really specific, and they had to make it worth it enough for you to input all of that information in their specific thing versus yours. I feel like the danger of ChatGPT as therapy is that if you're intellectualizing your feelings, ChatGPT isn't going to pull you out of that like a good therapist will. Totally. Yes, family said 1,000% human elements, messiness, weird, quirkiness, that. Yep. Megan said bringing back the human instead of overutilizing it. Right. So it's like, you know, we kind of have to think about like, how do we work with this to, yes, like save ourselves time and leverage like the amazingness that is AI right now and like kind of what we can do with it that we like didn't even have as an option 2 years ago, and not overutilize it so much where we're losing the thing people are craving most. And again, I want to like go back to what I said at the beginning. Like this might change wildly. Like in a year, we might be like, oh my God, that was so funny that I was sitting there having a conversation being like, you can tell it's AI. Like maybe in a year, we won't even be able to tell. I have no idea. All I know is that right now, right? You can tell. And what happens is a lot of people are losing themselves in it because it's so fucking appealing, so appealing to have something happen that quick, to be like, oh, I don't have to write this entire sequence. It gets written in 10 minutes and I just copy and paste it. Like the appeal of that for us in business is so strong that to work against that takes so much. And like there is a middle ground, right? Like the 10 minutes it took to write that versus like if you were having to write all that yourself, like we should be utilizing it. That's my point. But like we still have to have those human elements in it where I can like truly feel you in it. Like I had to say that to a client recently. I'm like, I can't even feel you in here. Like, I don't know how else to explain that. Except like, I know you're a really good writer. I know what it feels like to read and experience you. And I don't experience any of you here. And I think like most of us aren't like wanting to hear that or willing to say that. But to me, like that's the value we can provide, like, you know, to clients a little bit right now is like helping them find what's the word? Helping them find themselves in it in a way that's hard to when it's yours and when you're the one utilizing ChatGPT. Like, I don't think that client saw that until I said that. She wasn't like, oh, fuck it, I don't care. She was just like, oh, it sounded really good to me. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's really important. Rebecca said, my best asset as a therapist is that I'm an imperfect person connecting with another imperfect person and providing unconditional positive regard. Like, I showed up to sessions with a surprise stain on my shirt from my toddler last week because I'm a real person. AI gets much of a mirror. If you think something is bad, it agrees. If you think it's good, it agrees. It doesn't help you develop more self-awareness. That can be a very helpful tool with implementation. Yeah, totally agree. That unconditional positive regard, I think it gets weird with AI too, because I think a human providing unconditional positive regard in a therapeutic setting is very weird. Or I mean, it's very like helpful. And it can be very weird when it's like an AI providing unconditional positive regard in this setting where it's designed to mirror you and reflect back the same things too. So it does get really dicey, right? And I think the same thing is true in business. Like, you know, I did a post a long time ago that was like, I asked ChatGPT, like, what are the 7 ways to grow your business? And I like totally agreed with everything. And then I was like, of course I agreed with everything. Like, it was my ChatGPT. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we just have to have that ability to see outside of it. And I think what's also true is that sometimes it feels better though. Like, it feels actually better to engage with ChatGPT than your coach sometimes because it's just going to keep telling you like you're doing great. Sometimes it can feel better than with your therapist who's going to like call you out. And so like it really depends. Like there is this like, right, just like it feels better to have it write a whole email sequence for you in 10 minutes than to write it yourself. So I think we're getting into this really gray area of like, where is it helpful? Where is it harmful? Every time AI says I feel that way too, I'm like, no, you don't. You're a robot. And I literally tell it that. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? It's fascinating. So I think we need to be doubling down on all things human. I feel like sometimes where people get frustrated in this, like I know I have too. So just to like normalize this is I think that this is where people are like, oh, I don't want to make these silly reels about like whatever, like something stupid that happened in my life this week that feels so counterintuitive as a business coach. I want to like give them information. I want to tell them this or whatever. And I really get that because I have felt that way many times. And I truly believe this is how we stand out from AI right now. It's like, what is my silly little human experience? And can we connect around that? And can we see similar values in each other around that? And can we find understanding around that that builds from there? So I do think leaning into some of that is really important in a way that we sometimes don't emphasize enough. Like it can almost seem like, oh, eye roll, that's just for views or that's just whatever. And I actually think it matters so much. Megan said, I've had people tell me as a copywriter that they know ChatGPT steals the power of voice, but it saves them time and they're just so time poor that it's like they don't even care, that they're actually losing trust when they're with their audience when it's obviously chat writing their content. Oh, see, that's what like Megan, that is so exactly the point, right? It's almost like they're like, well, this amount of time versus this amount of time, like I'm willing to take that trade-off. And I think that trade-off will work for people for a while and there's a runway there, and then you won't be able to connect it to the downfall. Because you'll be like, well, I started using chat a year ago. What's the problem? And it's like, well, you had a year runway until people stop feeling you and feeling connected to you and like don't remember that content from a year ago that made them obsessed with you. Like it's hard because they'll think, well, what just happened? And it's like actually what happened a year ago, you know? Michelle said, I'm the weirdo that asked ChatGPT to offer me counter perspectives. Right. But you have to ask for that. That's the problem, right? With a coach, you don't necessarily have to be like, hey, can you give me a counter perspective here every time you want it? It's like naturally part of the thing. So good that you're asking for it, but the fact that you have to is part of the problem, right? Rebecca said, and the fact that I mess up is so important. If we think about attachment theory, it's about being a good enough therapist and making mistakes that encourage resilience. Totally. I love that. That's so good, right? And like, oh, hold on. Lynn says, ChatGPT doesn't evoke any of the actual emotion we want our clients to feel because ChatGPT can never have those specific examples, right? And again, like, who knows where this is going? But right now, that's it. Like, I can typically tell when content was written by ChatGPT because it's more airy and fluffy and it sounds really good, but like you almost have to read it several times to be like, but what are you like? Yes, I agree with everything. That sounds so good. And like, also like, what? Like land the plane for me a little bit more. Say something specific. Like what is the human feeling in that? Give me a detail, give me a whatever, right? Um, so again, not that I feel like I'm going a little bit too far off course here and saying like that it's bad. It's not bad. It's such a great tool, but I feel like what people are mostly overutilizing it for is to save time instead of using it to make things better. So you writing your content and then being like, hey, how, like, tell me 3 ways that this could be communicated even more effectively instead of like, hey, write all this for me or whatever. And I think we're really going to see a huge split in this in terms of our industry. Like, I think people are just going to zone out. Like, you know how there was a time where you wanted to sell like all the time in your feed. It was like such a thing. Like if I had a client who wasn't getting a lot of sales, I would literally be like, when's the last time you sold in your feed? Like you're barely selling, da, da, da. Now it's almost like the opposite. It's like people are so tuned out to the sales stuff. We had to like do something else because it's like our brains were just like tuning it out. I feel like our brains will start doing that with like ChatGPT stuff for at least a period of time where we're like, oh, yeah, that's not even, oh, I can tell that's AI. And like we just glaze over and move on. And I think we have to really work against that and be really careful because none of us are above losing interest and attention quickly, you know? Maggie said I put in the instructions for the project in Claude or in the GPT to request to question things and not just agree for sure. Lindsay said I like using ChatGPT to get me a starting point and then I go in and add specifics and emotions. Exactly. I write a lot of blog posts using chat and you have to constantly push it to go deeper and get more specific. The stuff it spits out at surface level. Right. I think what's interesting about what like Lindsay's saying there and Maggie's saying and Michelle's saying is like, there's a way to use it to make all your shit better, but like, it's not necessarily faster because you do have to be like, question me, give me more, let me run off of this, let me take this deeper, let me go back and forth, blah, 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 right? So it can make it really good and it can be faster in terms of like, you know, getting that ball rolling for you, but there's still like this human element that I think we have to all be so, so, so careful we're not losing because the second we lose that, like we might not experience the negative of that in our business, but there will be a timeline where it drops off, right? And that's why I believe another thing in terms of what's coming is like you have to be so engaged. And I don't mean engaged like whatever, like you have to be on Instagram all day. Like that's not what I mean. I think, yeah, Maggie just said the exact same thing. I don't think it saves me time necessarily. It helps me think more deeply and strategically. Exactly. Yep, totally. Like it can make you better if you let it, you know, which is huge. So engage, what I mean by that is like you have to be paying attention. Like, is like, are you just checking out? Are you feeling what your audience is feeling? Do you feel like you have a pulse on that? Do you know what's going on with them? Do you know what they want? Do you like that kind of stuff? Do you feel like you know if you talk about XYZ thing, people are really going to love it? Like, I'm not saying you have to predict that 100% of the time. I certainly can't, but I do think that level of engagement in terms of like your business and your audience in a season where change is going to be so rampant and so quick is absolutely non-negotiable. If you have a business right now that you do not want to stay relatively engaged with as the CEO, you will not have a business years from now. Like to me, it's that simple. People might disagree with me, but like I feel that to my core. You know, like in a season of big change, your engagement in what's changing is so crucial. So again, that doesn't mean you have to be on Instagram 24/7, or it doesn't mean you have to be like, you know, spending constant time with it. But if you've lost the thread of what's happening with your audience, what they're responding to, that is really a bad place because I guarantee you that's going to change so quickly, much quicker than we're all used to. Like I did that eras post. I linked it in the live stream notes for today. If you think every 1.6 years was fast, buckle up for the next 2. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be rapid. And I think we all have to like have enough engagement to accept that. Julie said, I like the The way I like to describe it is you're the director of the movie and ChatGPT is like actors. You direct and organize and tell it what to tweak. Yeah, totally. What's I think interesting in even this AI 2027 thing is they're talking about how like at a certain point the AI will be training the AI, right? And so it's like you have to train it really well, and then it's going to train the next version of AI. And so it's like going to be so crazy how much this transforms, right? Michelle says, I do fear for the line between reality and AI and the environmental impacts of AI, right? So that's a whole other thing. I'm not an expert in this in any way, shape, or form, but it's like if you're really utilizing AI to get better, you're also probably utilizing it a ton. And then there's like all of these like ethical implications with that and what that looks like and what that means from like an environmental impact perspective. So that's really interesting too. Michelle said, totally agree that if your heart isn't in the business, nothing will sustain that long term. Right. Like we cannot systematize or automate enough to remove that human element of like, I have the finger on the pulse and I'm staying engaged with that and I'm staying on top of that. And I'm not pissed about having to pivot so quickly and so much, right? Not that you can't have your moments of being pissed, but like on a broad scale, you're like, this is part of it right now. You're not mad at like every day, you know? Um, Lucy said, I know that so much is changing so quickly. I wonder, I felt so discombobulated with how fast everything has changed. What would you suggest nowadays with selling an AI? Is it more personal conversation stories, speaking to it? Interested to hear your thoughts. I think it's like so much human. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier of like, you know, I feel like it's so easy to eye roll those kind of like, you know, whatever. I'll just use myself as an example because I can't think of another great one, but like I talk about like Diet Coke a lot because I'm a big Diet Coke person. And I feel like when I've done like a few stupid reels on Diet Coke, and I think some people will look at that from a business perspective and be like, that's so stupid. It's so eye rolling. I don't want to have to like perform about like some random factoid of my personality. Like I want to talk about business. And like that's fine. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I am saying like getting like making sure your audience sees you as a full and complete human with like weird quirks and preferences and flaws and whatever is actually really fucking important. You can choose to do that however you want to. Like, I mean, you have to make Diet Coke reels, right? But I do think that it's so easy to like make that wrong or eye roll it. And like, again, I used to myself, I'm like, why don't like, they don't care. Like, they don't care how I can help them, but they actually do fucking care now. They do care that I'm like a real human, that there are ways to connect to me, that there are like, you know, these things we share in common, like, because it's so rare now because you're so used to being kind of flooded with this content that you just can't tell if it's a human or AI. And I think like this kind of more like, I'm a human, here are some of my preferences, here's what I do well, here's what I fuck up. Like, that's why like a best practice is like frame stuff through your perspective. It's not because we're trying to be like, oh my God, like put yourself on a pedestal, perform for the camera, be a dancing monkey. It's more like they need to feel the human. But it's like literally what's going to set you apart right now. You get to do that in whatever way you want, but it is like a best practice right now because them feeling that human is what's going to set us apart right now. You know what I mean? Yeah, ChatGPT could not make Diet Coke content. Marcy says in my post, my most engaging posts on IG are about Diet Coke. I love that. I heard it, Marcy, I heard it called a fridge cigarette the other day and I died. I was like, oh no. I'm not buying into that propaganda, but I did think that was funny. And yeah, Michelle said I feel the same way about my Disney content. I just shared a reel with nostalgia for Tom Sawyer Island that performed well. Yes. Um, Maggie said, I think that's been happening for a while and is growing the craving for authenticity over polish, fakeness. Exactly. Like, I think that will only continue is almost like how much can you show you're human? And that doesn't mean you have to like perform vulnerability or any of this stuff that like we hate. But I do think you have to like Diet Coke is like not me sharing my whole heart or vulnerability. It's like this random thing that I like. It's like you get to decide like where your lines are and stuff. I've talked about this on here in the group, but like I have been so engaged, specifically last year. I did so much deep work on like family of origin stuff, like went so hard in therapy, like just if one of my clients, Kara, was here, she would tell you it's because of something about where my Jupiter was or whatever. Like I was like made for that last year. And I've talked about very, very, very little of that because it feels so like there's some family lines I would still be navigating there in terms of saying that. I say all that to say, like, you don't have to like cut yourself open and bleed for the internet to show that you're a human. Like, you still get to have your lines and boundaries. But if you're not looking for ways to do that and you think just spewing XYZ information, business, health, lifestyle, whatever, at people without having to showcase your humanness is going to work anymore, I just don't believe it is. Um, which I think leads Coke Zero was the fridge cigarette. Maybe that actually is what I heard because that does make more sense. Maggie says, I love Bridgerton, and people who have never commented on anything will see something Bridgerton and send it to me. And it's like a connecting experience. Yes, that. Like, we have to start making those things right and important. And again, this was some of my own learning, of like, that's not light work. Relationship building is such real, deep, lasting work in business. And it's so meaningful because that idea of like, I could just go ask ChatGPT 100 questions versus I could ask this human 100 questions, like something has to set us apart. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if I'm not the human behind that, what's the fucking difference, I think that's also why we're in such a season of talk with people, not at people. So how I mean that is like so much content that used to perform well, I think was a lot more talking at people like, go do this, take these 5 steps, do this thing. You're not doing this well, so you need to do this instead, blah, 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 blah. And we stopped creating community and real conversations for such a long time, I think. And I feel that there's such a swing back to community, real conversations, connection, all of that. Because again, like ChatGPT will talk at you all day and will probably do it far, far, far better with a lot more personalization and knowledge than some random person on Instagram. You know what I mean? So that swing back to like, it matters if I want you to talk with me. And I think that also matters as a coach. I think so many coaches, I'm going to be such a bitch right now, but I think so many coaches got successful in an era where you almost didn't have to like people or coaching to be a coach. And like, they would be like, I don't want people to talk back to me. Like, ugh, I'm not interested in that. And it was so about like the boundaries and the almost like 500 layers between you and someone else, or them being able to talk at you and then kind of like disappear and not have to be real or connective or engaged. And I think that's totally different, right? I think that like we have to be creating this like community, these conversations, these connection points where people feel like we're talking with them, not just spewing at them, because again, like they can get that now in a much, much, much more effective way, right? Michelle says, I like content that feels like a text you'd send a friend. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It matters if I want you to talk to me. Right. Like, I feel like that's where, it was before where it's almost like, don't talk to me. How dare you talk to me kind of thing. Right. And I think now it's like, if you can't command attention and engagement from your audience, right? Like that is tough. Like you have to be able to be great at getting attention and building connection. Like if there are 2 things that are going to matter, and I mean, in some ways always matter, it's those 2. So what's going to get attention? I fucking guarantee you it's not like, a bunch of shit ChatGPT spit out. And what's going to get connection? Again, I guarantee you it's not just like talking at people. It's like being a human, having real conversations, being present for real responses, like all of these things that I think our industry almost like shit on for so long of like, don't be that available or whatever. And now it's like, yeah, you definitely need to know how to get attention and connection. That's the only way your business is going to grow. That doesn't have to mean on social, by the way. Like some of the way you might get attention and connection is like in person through referrals, et cetera, et cetera. Like, please don't mistake me to mean that I just mean Instagram, because I don't. But there has to be some mechanism for that you feel good about utilizing in your business. That's not just relying on AI to spit out a bunch of things that you spit out at other people and then hope that sells for you. Like that cannot be where you're going if you want your business to really, really ride out this storm. Julia says that definitely would be the case for organic content. What about paid ads? Would you weave in more connection and personality that, or keep it strictly here by these 5 steps? I even think, well, I think it depends on what you want that specific thing to do, right? Like, and the same is true for organic, really. If the whole point of the ad is just like buy this thing right now, of course, but like you may want to weave in more ads that are more just kind of like visibility ads, connection ads for them to see something and find it really interesting and then like want to go to your page and engage with you more. Like they have to have a reason to want to do that next thing. So I think we need all of it to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Same with like email, like some emails you're going to send that are like, hey, buy my thing. Some are going to be like much more about connection building, but I think as a trajectory, the relationships are what make the sales. So we can't force the sale without the relationship, right? I really think that matters so much. And the way that we build those relationships again is like real human element. I talk about this in my mini course, but like something I always come back to, I think about this probably like 3 times a week, always, as it relates to a client result or a different conversation or whatever, is if you look at what typically helps clients have the best outcomes in a therapeutic container, it's the quality of the relationship they have with the therapist. It's not like the type of therapy, it's not the tools used or whatever. It's the quality of the client therapist connection and relationship. The same is true here. What makes people transform, make big shifts, invest in themselves, take big leaps in their business, do big things? It's probably going to be the quality of the connection and relationship. And so we just have to figure out like what are the new ways to continue to foster that in an AI flooded environment, right? Yeah, Rebecca just summarized it much better, which is it's all vibes. Totally. Julia says, feels like it's easier to be engaged with an audience with smaller accounts. I feel more connected to people I follow when I know they read and respond versus a larger account who never replies. You can kind of lose interest after a while. I think that can be true too, but I also think depends on how the larger account is treating things to a certain extent. Like my best friend Sarah has a pretty large Instagram account. I think she has almost 100,000 followers, and I feel like she really engages with her people. She shows herself. She like makes a really big point to like engage when she can, to make people feel seen, to take a pulse on her community, whatever. And I'm not saying anyone does this perfectly, but I think like she really puts a lot of care and attention into that. And so I think even if she doesn't respond to someone's one direct thing, they still feel the care and attention she brings. So it's kind of like Rebecca saying, it's all vibes. Like I do think sometimes with the big accounts, they get so like, I'm not here, I'm not connected, I'm not engaged. And I think that really does make a difference too, for sure. Let me look at my notes. Okay, so like just to summarize a little bit, so like if there is a core shift that is going to shape the rest of this year, it's like how do you stay as human and specific as possible in how you're marketing? Like that, kind of like ChatGPT. By the way, I have done this too. So like this is not to say any of us should be like not experimenting with AI or having not used it. Like I have certainly done plenty of stuff where I was like, oh, I thought that was so amazing. And now I read it back and I can see how like it was like I was so like overutilizing ChatGPT. But my point in saying that is I think the new conversation, the new like shift that has been happening is going to continue to happen for the rest of the year is like how can you show you're human, how human can you be, how present can you be, how much can you help with like implementation, execution, things that really like move the needle for people versus like I'm just here for information, and or even like I'm just here for vibes. Like yeah, I mean yes to what Rebecca said about like vibes in the coach therapist container, or I mean client therapist container, but like the presence is really there. Like a coach who's like completely not present, thinks that they shouldn't have to even have a call with you and just expects you to write off vibes. Like that's not it either, because again, like I could get more support from AI at that point. Like we have to find ways to differentiate ourselves, and most of those have to do with being human. I think, the thing that's dying out that like I don't feel like we're talking about enough is information. Like true information in that sense is dying out. And I believe we have to find better, more effective ways to sell, communicate, all of that, to look at our digital products, etc. I feel like I'm surprised we're not having more of that conversation in our industry. Um, I also like I'm just going through what I said in the message because I want to make sure we're landing all of this. Um, in terms of like strategies for clients to convert, build trust, all of that, it's like relationships. It really is. It's like, how are you building and leveraging relationships? Like even uh one of my clients for her like webinar, she asked a few of her clients if they would record a really short thing that she could use in her webinar. And she has really deep and beautiful relationships with them. And so they did, and they were like, sure. And she put these in her training, and her conversion rate skyrocketed because it's like this real human vouching for another human there. And it's not this like perfected testimonial. It's like, hey, this person has made such a difference in my life. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you what it looked like. Da, da, da. And so it's like both, right? It's like the relationship is what allowed her to ask. And then the relationship was like leverage in that training because people see so much trust built. They're like, oh, that's a real human that was willing to like record this. And now I can see this and I can hear it from their perspective and whatever. And there are so many ways to do this, but I'm trying with clients to incorporate a lot more of that type of stuff into launching, whether it's like, hey, here are the names of 3 people. You don't even have to ask for, like, you could go talk to them. Hey, here are 3 videos where you can see how much my people like appreciate and trust me. Hey, here are relationships that you can go connect with, creating more relationships between your people. I'm doing a really special event for my clients this year, and like the entire point of that is like creating more relationships for them. um so I say all that to say, like, I really do feel like that human element and that relational element is at the core of so much of what's coming next, if what we're competing against is like commoditized knowledge, right? um Rachel says, curious to hear your thoughts on how AI is going to change scaling. A lot of coaches and others scale through courses or programs that are mainly info based. I feel like the way to grow now is depth, but what are your thoughts on adding depth while still creating space for creativity and preventing burnout? Yeah, I mean, I think like totally like possible. It might just look like, do you have more support coaches now? Do you have more in your programs that aren't just about fire hosing people with knowledge, but like actually giving them real concrete ways, whether it's like with templates or with more support coaches or more support coaches or asynchronous support to go implement these things. Like, I don't think it has to be like, oh, you just can't scale anymore, or that you can't even have programs. But I think it's like, what is the scaffolding in those programs that actually makes a difference, where someone's like, yeah, that's more worth it to me than to go chat with a bot. Right. And again, in certain cases, a bot in a program can be really helpful. And in other cases, if my bot knows me better and the program can't offer me anything aside from that, like, might be less scalable. So I think we just have to look at scalability different. Like, I think this idea of the best kind of scaling is automated. It has no human involvement. You could put 5,000 people through a program and it would take the exact same amount of time, energy, and effort and whatever. Like, that might not be the game as much anymore. But I think, like, could you put 5,000 people through a program and have this like really, really, really beautiful way that you've built out implementation and created process for that, maybe created support coaches for that, maybe created a bot that does help personalize like their syllabus and trajectory for them. I don't know. Like, I think there are a lot of different ways we could do stuff like this. So I think it's still very possible to scale. I mean, the definition of scaling, right, is like increasing your revenue at a faster rate than you're increasing your expenses, basically. But it doesn't mean you have no expenses. And I think that's what we have to let go of in our space right now. Like, the expense might be more support coaches, or it might be more support for the clients in the program, you know? Michelle said, I feel like some stuff is going to have to get to the root of the problem, which is not that people need knowledge or don't have knowledge. It said they struggle to implement or feel overwhelmed. Yep, buy it. And that's like the level of nuance in order to move the needle forward and meet their goals. Totally. And it's a time thing. It's like, Megan was saying earlier too, it's like that time of like, yeah, I know that copy is not great, but it saved me 4 hours. Like, maybe we're not going to be able to save people that much time, but can we do it in a way that still gets them better results than can we help make things easier, faster, better for them? Like that's what's going to scale. Like what always scales, in my opinion, is being great at what you do. It's creating a blue ocean. It's like, are you better? Are you cheaper? Are you whatever? Like, what can you do to really stand out and give your customers the best service that they can find? Like that, there's always a way to scale that, you know? Um, and then I had put in the thing, like the thing you probably don't want to hear, but might be exactly what ensures your long-term success is to expect, anticipate, and prepare for change that is coming. Nobody wants to hear that. I don't either. I really don't. And I know that if any of us are going to keep like riding this wave and be successful in that, we have to be at a point of somewhat embracing the idea that we're going to be in a pretty rapid fire few years. And again, I don't mean like that means like you need to change your messaging or your model every week, but I do think it means that you don't expect that the status quo just looks like this forever. I don't think anybody is coasting right now. I think that there is people that are like doing an amazing job, just being like, hey, I'm going to like maintain this level of income, even though the industry has changed. I think there are people that are going past that because they have new and creative and innovative ideas. Or I think there are people that are really falling backwards and going to find it difficult to keep maintaining or growing unless they accept that change is going to continue. It is not slowing down in our space at all. And we have to be like somewhat, I would venture to say, excited about that. I think if we're going to keep doing this, like for me, I get a lot of excitement being like, let me read this thing. Let me see where this is going. Let me play with this. That might not be where you get your excitement. It doesn't matter. Like we just have to figure out where it comes through for each of us. Like maybe you love being massively creative and this is like a new way to create. Maybe you're really, really, really good at connections. And this is just an excuse for you to constantly be surveying your audience and connecting with them. Like you have to find some element, I think, in this like constant sea of change that feels exciting to you that you can always lean into when that's happening, because I feel like if you don't have that, it's gonna be so easy to kind of feel unmoored, ungrounded, and really like a bit chaotic in the next few years in our space. And so for the rest of this year, my advice is human, 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 connect, 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 build those relationships. Like no matter what's coming next, those relationships that you have, that connection you have with your audience, like, man, that's going to go a long fucking way. No matter what you have to change, that is the foundation for almost all the change. So I think that if we all double down on that and focus on that and really make that the most important element, it doesn't mean, we're completely insulated from any of the things that are coming. It just means we're so much better positioned to move with them, to move through them, to bring our audience with them, to bring our business with them. So I feel like that's really like the thing. Someone sent me this post and they were like, I don't actually like vibe with this person's content. Typically, this is a really interesting post. Tell me what you think. And the post is basically like this guy being like, hey, shit's about to get crazy with AI. Like you should make all the money you can in the next 2 years and just be ready. And he said it in this really like doomsday-ish kind of way that was not necessarily super supportive, but I also kind of got his point, which is like, okay, we know what's working now. Like, let's leverage the human element, the connection, the whatever. We don't know what's coming in 2 years. Like, if this grows as fast as it could, or goes in the kind of some of the direction like AI 2027 suggests, like we're going to be beyond even just a small pivot at that point. And so like, can we get resource now? Can we lean into that now? I think is a really, really important piece of the conversation. So that's what I'm thinking about. That's where I'm at. I'm like, how do I build more connection? How do I build relationships? Not in a vanity metrics kind of way, but in like I really feel like I have the pulse on this. I really feel like I know where my people are. I really feel like if I had 2 spots open next week, like I would have some people I want to reach out to. I really have some people in my DMs that, like I'm excited to engage with, et cetera, et cetera. Again, DMs is an example, it doesn't have to be that. I think this is what's going to matter, at least for the short term. And beyond that, like, listen, your guess is as good as mine. But I do believe if we do this now, we're better prepared for what's to come. And I think in some ways that can be exciting if we let it. So this is just my honest and truthful, unfiltered thoughts. I hope it is not, what's the word I want to use? I hope that is not like, don't use ChatGPT or don't get excited about the future. I think quite the opposite. I think it's like, be really intentional about how we're using it, be really prepared for like a very exciting future that is going to come at a rapid rate. Like, I think we can make all of this right. And I think we can have fun with all of it. But I do think that we have to see the kind of pitfalls of it, of like, if I'm not prepared for change, that's going to be hard. If I'm just overutilizing ChatGPT and not leaning into the human element, it is going to be harder. So, you know, there are of course some like negatives, but I definitely think there are huge, huge upsides. And like, listen, most businesses that really, really, really take off do so in a time of like big change and transition because they capitalize on that. And so I think this can be true for many, many people to come if we lean into all this. So that's what I got. I know this was a long one, so thank you guys for being here. If you engage, comment, any of those things, you're entered to win $100 gift card. I appreciate you. I love having these conversations with you. I love when you guys come and share your thoughts and perspective. It's so meaningful. Questions, whatever. It's so meaningful to me. Speaking of connection, like getting to talk with you in this setting is like one of my favorite parts of my business. So just thank you so much for being here. And yeah, if you have more thoughts or if you watch the replay, feel free to comment. I would love to hear them. And I hope you guys have a beautiful week. I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.